And so I always tell people, I don't want people to see, as I mentioned before, that, Willie's waiting to get elected so that he can get those things done. I'm like, no, we're doing those things now so that people can say it's already done. This is
Yeah.
what it looks like with using the community.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. This next guest that I have on for you guys today is, in my opinion, one of the most pivotal people that I can think of in these coming years after the Trump administration. So I'm super excited to hear his thoughts on what he wants to do, what are his plans for the future, and what are his plans for his campaign. Dr. Willie Montague, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
For sure. So the first thing that I want to get into is I just want, for the people at home, people that are listening, give them your name, what you're running for, what you're running behind, what you're, just a little elevator pitch of who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Willie Montague. I am running for Congress in District 10 in the Sunshine State of Florida. I am the president of a nonprofit organization that works with boys ages 7 to 25. I stand on constitutional principles, biblical worldview, making sure that we adhere to those things that God has assigned us to do in our nation and across the world.
I love it, man. I was talking to somebody recently about, he was actually my last guest, about what is needed from congressmen and people in places of leadership that are coming up. And we need voices like yours and people who are willing to stand for constitutional rights and also biblical rights, freedom of religion, in the appropriate context. Because it's a bias towards me, because on this channel I like to talk about religion and Christianity and stuff. What are your views on how the Christian worldview should be perceived from a political framework?
I was at a rally here in Arizona last night, and something that was mentioned I thought was very, if those who are familiar with Pastor Gibson, which has taken to the political climate, but as well as pastors of different churches, and he said that America did not make the church, but the church made America. In other words, I believe that from a political view, that the churches in America has an obligation to make sure that politics is actually involved, because we can't avoid politics no matter where you go, from the grocery store dealing with taxes, to marriage dealing with taxes, to what happens in our churches and whether or not they think that we should have freedom of speech or not. So what we're living in today's society is impactful for those who are church leaders to make sure that we are including the sound of a political climate, because it's important in the changes that need to take place. So I'm full force when it comes to politics. I've been involved with politics since I was 14, as well as ministry at the same time.
Wow. Okay, so I admire that, because I've been a Christian for 10 years. I've only really started to politicize my, I guess, online content for the last year or so. And to me, one of the biggest pushbacks that I got, specifically from other Christians, people in the church, was that I shouldn't be blending the two, that they're different sides of the same coin. And to me, the way I looked at it was that Christianity, theology, apologetics, all this stuff was a vehicle for me to talk about politics in a way that would be contextual for people within the church, right? They would be able to relate to it more because I'm speaking about it through a biblical principle. What have you seen? What pushback has been the most common for you, even from being since such a young age and being in politics and in ministry at the same time? What's kind of the most popular critique that people have of you and what your message is?
Absolutely, a great question. There's a lot of pushback. One, myself being in ministry. Two, with me being, I don't think the pushback would come if I was a Democrat. So I think the pushback comes because I'm conservative. I'm conservative, and I'm also in ministry. So I get a lot of pushback from those who are other church leaders that somehow associates my political view with who is currently in office or who is not in office, versus what our assignment is as being those who are first called and assigned by God to go full throttle into making sure his plan and will is accomplished. So I don't really pay attention anymore. It used to be like, man, why are people saying these things? How does that, make me feel? And then I thought about, wait a minute. this is an assignment. Just like there's some people assigned to go out and feed the homeless. There's some that are assigned to go out and take care of the orphans. Everyone's assignment is unique and different. And I think for so long that as those who are in the political arena have not had a chance to say we can be Christian and as well in political arena. So I stopped being concerned more about the pushback and more about how I can push back and show the right way of doing things. On both sides of it, being those who are being someone that is Christ-centered and faith-based, and being someone who is a politician.
I love that, man. That's so encouraging to me because, like I said, I've been trying to navigate these political waters within the context of my Christianity for a little while, a year or so. And so it's encouraging to see people like you that are pros at it, that have it down, that understand what the difference is. Did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, so it's great to see that. I am assuming that most people, when you go on to talk to all these other news stations and stuff, that they're asking you about your policies. So we can get into that, but I want to continue to kind of bear down in this road because I think that this might be a side of you that people haven't seen yet. So for me, when I first started getting involved in politics and when I started making connections in this arena, one of my big internal struggles, and maybe you can kind of speak to this, is how to display my Christianity within the context of politics, even within the context of like networking and meeting people. And obviously, that when it comes to politics, there's events, there's things you have to go to, there's places you have to be. What is your mindset going into those places? Are you actively going in there thinking like I need to relay the gospel to these people, or are you kind of looking at it as like an end to a mean, towards like once I get in the position that I need to be, I can really relay the gospel with more power and clarity?
Yeah, whenever I go to any event, I never go to an event with the mindset of politics.
Interesting.
I scale every event that I go to based off of who's currently there. But I actually just seek the Lord. I actually ask to speak last if I can. So what I do is I actually scale the audience, and then I actually, while I'm there, I'm praying, and I'm asking the Lord to actually give me a scripture to deal with those individuals that are there. Wow. So when it's time for me to take the platform, I always discuss who I am, but I always find a scripture to tie in to what's happening currently in today's society and then what is the plan of action. And so when I go and do that, I always tell people that I'm always about community first. I believe all politics is local. Yes. We have had this mindset that it's, the federal government should be, one newspaper had me listed as too community based because they wanted me to talk about all federal issues. And you're running for Congress, you need federal issues. And this is where we have missed it. So many times we have had people who have stood up and said, I'm going to run for office, and this is what I'm going to do, instead of this is what I'm doing right now. So what I have decided to do is when I go onto any platform, it's no longer about me making a promise, it's about me taking action right now. I don't need federal dollars to show you what a community looks like in action. I don't need federal dollars to go clean up the streets, to help with the human trafficking, to help with the homeless population, to make sure that there's affordable housing or that there's, certain medical attention that's needed in our communities. But if I'm the one who is walking faith-based and I'm standing up for my values and I take that platform, every platform that I'm given is an opportunity for me to be a witness and an example to Christ Jesus. And that is something that I have stood on because before I started really getting into running for office, that was a promise I made the Lord. If he gave me a platform, I'm going to make sure to use it for his glory. And so everywhere I go, I make sure that he is mentioned and that, Christ is the center of what we're doing and what we're saying. And when I leave off that stage, I don't want people just to hear this was Willie Montague. I want people to hear that Christ is really returning to our nation, and it is one nation under God, and there's no exception.
I absolutely love that. I wish I could move to Florida so I could vote for you. I will say this, since you're talking about local and the community, I lived in Tampa for a couple of years, went to college down there. I don't know if that's in your area or not, but it's a little distance. It's a little distance. What are some of the problems that are facing that specific area? I think you said District 10 down in Florida. What are some of the key issues that you've been either working on already or are you planning on working on when it comes to your local, I guess, territory?
Well, as I mentioned about human trafficking in Florida,
Wow.
Human trafficking is number 3 in the country. And the county in which our district makes up is District 10, Orange County, which we come to when you have, Universal. It's number 2 in the region.
Wow.
And so I have created an organization called Project Exodus that focuses on fighting against human trafficking. I've also, as I said, worked with the youth and young adult boys who are ages 7 to 25 in that area to help with drugs, to help with any substance use, mental health, behavior issues. Working in the schools, especially Title I schools, where you see that's normally the poverty level stricken schools and areas, and also working to help bring clinical support into those communities, because we have issues with HIV rates. We have issues with not certain medical attention that is getting to those areas. So what I actually did, it started working now. We actually have a team of doctors where we're going to launch off a clinic, a mobile clinic, where we're able to go in throughout the community to make sure that those things are taken care of. I mentioned to you about what we're doing with human trafficking. We also are getting ready to launch a school for boys 9th to 12th grade, which will be a faith-based school to be able to help them to navigate from alternative type methods to actually really getting out in society to actually get something accomplished and done. And so we're working hard. We're working steadfast. We have a task force that covers every area that you can think about that can make sure that District 10 is covered. We have a 1-800 resource line that people can call and get the resources they need. And so I always tell people, I don't want people to see, as I mentioned before, that, Willie's waiting to get elected so that he can get those things done. I'm like, no, we're doing those things now so that people can say it's already done. This is what it looks like with using the community at hand. And so that's what I focus on. I focus on what we can get done and accomplish now. And there's so many areas that are needed in District 10, but we're working every angle that we can, even down to job creation. I actually held an event where we called all of the parties together to discuss community. We had Democrats, we had Libertarians, we had Republicans, and we had the Black Lives Matter.
Wow.
We're actually doing another one on March 18th, but and once a month. And actually, we had a cleanup this past Saturday, and the Black Lives Matter said, we want to help you. And they came, and they came out and helped us clean our community. And so I got some kickback from both sides on that. But the thing about me is that community, the word unity is in there. And unity does not mean that you're in agreement with what other people are doing or saying, but the trash that's on our streets, the schools that are in poverty-stricken level. We have a community called Paramore that's 52% below the poverty level. And those people who walk up and down the street that are homeless, those people who are those young girls and boys that are being sex trafficked and human trafficking and all God knows what else is taking place, they're not concerned about your creation.
Right.
They're concerned about the need being taken care of. And I'd rather take darts in my back for standing for unity and what I know Christ would want us to do than for me to make this a whole political bias issue. Right. It's time for us to really fight back and really get our communities up and running, because we can make it political all we want to. But at the end of the day, when someone is hungry, they don't care if you're Democrat or Republican. Can you feed me? Yes. Can you give me clothes? Can you help me to go to the next place? Can you get me a job? Can you help my family to be better? And so that's what we're doing. We're creating a quality of life environment for those who are in the community of District 10.
That's amazing. I think that that's such a pragmatic and what's the word I'm looking for? A practical approach to being a congressman somewhere, because a lot of the times, like you said, a lot of what happens is in particular, I think the left tends to politicize things that don't need to be political. And I mean, you can't really get any more like bipartisan or nonpartisan than a cleanup. Who's going to disagree with like, hey, we want to pick up after our hometown. This is the place we live. We want it to be clean. And it's interesting you bring that up, because my last guest, Anthony Cabasa, who's the conservative Latino on Instagram, or he was, he's doing the same thing out in Cali. So he's doing a cleanup over there, and he had people who are, on the left, who are liberals or Democrats, come and help him as well, because it seems like that's just something that gets to the heart of the issue. And I think this is why I said, like, your movement, his voice is some of the most important things that are happening in this kind of post-Trump era, because people are tired of the duality. They're tired of the one side versus the other. They want to just agree on something. Like, what is one thing that's not political that we can get together and do and not have to worry about the gunk that comes with the political, jargon? I think you hit the nail on the head, man. What is the let me go here. The sex trafficking that you mentioned, human trafficking, to me, that's one of the most noble causes that somebody can get involved in, because it's such a horrific thing. It seems like you've almost set up an infrastructure where you're almost preventing the victims from existing, right? You're teaching kids how to be better men. You're teaching, young ladies how to not be in those delicate situations. On the criminal side of things, what can somebody do in order to prevent criminality like that from happening as much? Because we can't really get rid of it completely, right? Even though we would want to.
Great question. The number one thing is education. What happens when it is with human trafficking? Oftentimes, people do not know or even believe that it exists.
Yeah.
Just recently, that in Tampa there was the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. The Super Bowl is a magnet for human trafficking. In fact, they arrested, I believe, 73 individuals tied to human trafficking ring. Wow. So what we find is that if we can go into the churches and the schools and start educating these young boys and young girls on what's happening around them, they become more aware, and then we can also prevent those who are the criminals from coming in and trying to basically get these girls and boys trapped.
Right.
And so what we do is we make sure that there's platforms available for these parents. We need to make sure the parents as well are educated in this area. One of the issues that we see when it comes to the education piece of that with in that area is that the parents, with the pandemic taking place, more students was at home. And so because of that, a lot of these apps and a lot of these programs and video games have the microphone where they're speaking to these people on the other side, thinking that they're speaking to people who are their age, and they're not. And so we have to really make sure that we're doing like, back in the day where you're making sure you're following up. Hey, are you doing your homework? Who are you talking to? What is that text message going to? Who is that on the other side? And kind of really putting more responsibility back in the home. And a lot of this comes because we do have a disruption of the nuclear family.
Yes.
And if we can really have that restoration in the nuclear family, I believe we wouldn't have our kids kind of zoned out in video games to kind of, hey, I got to work, I'm busy. So we just need restoration. We need restoration in the family. That's the first thing. We need education in our school, like real education on this issue. And then we definitely need it in our churches, because so many churches have youth programs and they go on, they have, great music, pizza, they have great fun, but we have to get really down to the serious issues that are at hand, because sometimes the parents do not know, and the kids don't even know that they're actually part of human trafficking, even though they go home. There are some that are being trafficked and used and go home every single day because they're being groomed.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So how does somebody know if that's happening to them, for the parents or for the kids themselves? Let's say there's some younger kids watching this. What are some of the signs of that?
Well, one of the things is you say, for example, an older man, woman, whatever, starts having you come over and start versus it being mentoring, it becomes more like, as we the term is grooming, where it's like, hey, come, let me take pictures. You're pretty, you ought to model, you ought to do, and it starts off where it's an innocent thing, where it appears to be, where it's like, oh, they're trying to get me to model, and they want me to whatever, and then it slowly starts being where the layers start peeling back, like, well, maybe you should not wear that shirt. Put something more that's a little tighter, and it becomes a grooming part. And it starts off where it's just someone that takes you in. You think, hey, they're spending time with my child, whatever. The child gets comfortable. And that's where it is. It starts with that comfortability, going out to eat, and then you're opening up and like, yeah, my parents really, they're restrictive, but you're cool. You let me do X, Y, and Z, and then it goes into the drugs. And the reason why a lot of these girls and boys it's hard for them to get out of these situations is because the drugs, they pump them full of drugs, and that addiction is what they're drawn to. They don't want to be there to be used as a sex instrument, but the drugs, that addictive mentality. And so they're like, hey, if you leave over there, you're not going to get this high. And so a lot of them stay for the high. and while men and women come in and out doing whatever they need to do. So those are things you have to look for when you start seeing a change in behavior, like the attitude change, lack of respect. You got teenagers that's going to act how they act, but when it's something that goes from one extreme to another, like overnight, and they're the demeanor change, they feel like they're just not comfortable talking. Those are things you need to kind of watch out for and see. And there's plenty of manuals and things out there, hotlines and information out there. And I would just tell anyone that's listening, please just research, type in the statistics for your state. And see what's going on, find out what kind of resources they have, and find some kind of educational. There's an organization called Paving the Way Foundation, Jan Edwards, that I recommend. She has some great materials for parents.
Great. I'll make sure to link to that in the description below. I think that there's a great, message to heed. In particular, what I'm thinking of is I used to be a youth leader in my church, and one of the things that we made sure to do, we had maybe 20 kids, right? We didn't have a big number, but what we made sure to do is when we would, let's say, want to take the kids somewhere or bring them all to the church at the same time, we would make sure to go to each kid's house individually, knock on their door, talk with their parents, make sure their parents accept what we're doing, they tell them that they're welcome to come along, like make sure that there's a sense of safety that gets developed there. This way, they learn to almost expect that from anybody that hangs around their child. And I think that doing that as a church becomes important because it allows you to just solidify and get closer as a community, like you said, and the education becomes, the center of it all.
Right.
For sure. So let's move on from this. I want to focus on maybe some of your policy and what you believe when it comes to, constitutional principles. What are the things that are separating you right now from, let's say, people that you're running against or people that you might see in your area?
Well, one thing is I like to focus on the First Amendment, which is making sure that we have that freedom of speech, religion, press, petition our government. Yeah. And I think that right now you see throughout all the social media platforms, major ones, there's a huge area of censorship. And we have to really start taking this issue. See, what we do is we focus on the federal government to give so much, except to actually protect our rights as American citizens. And I think that that's the issue that we're having. We don't mind when it's something that is given as such. Everybody's waiting for their bank account to roll over for the stimulus check, but people do not realize that it's not stimulating the economy, right? Because there's $1.9 trillion, and all you're getting out of that is $1,400, and somehow they think that's supposed to last you like 6 months. I don't know how you're going to survive off of that. Gas is going up so high across the nation, and it's getting to the point now where we really are not seeing America that as it is. So the First Amendment needs to be protected. We need to be able to speak out and speak against what we do not like without censorship, without Twitter banning us, without Facebook saying that it needs to be fact check. We need to get to the place where if this is what we're standing in America, and if I am a citizen of this United States and my government is not doing for me what I need them to do as hired representatives, then it's time for you to go. Yes. And that's the first thing that I want to do as when it deals with policy is making sure that when I get to the Capitol and we get to Washington, D.C., that we're looking at all of the things that are there and saying what are the issues that really concern the American people, and how do we overturn things that have stricken the voice of the people. And that is what I believe the left is scared of, because they're scared of we the people having the power that the Constitution has told us that it is our right. Absolutely. And that's what we have to get back to the constitutional right to voice our opinion and to petition our government and tell them that we have a grievance. And the grievance is that we are not being heard. We're not being able to move forward as it is necessary for us to get things accomplished. The second thing, voter integrity. I mentioned this on my Twitter. 1971, this was 50 years ago. 1971, we put a rover on the moon. 2021, we cannot secure our election. We have a big problem. Yeah. So, here we are 50 years later, and if we had all that technology to get to the moon, they just put a van-sized rover on Mars. This technology is blowing us away, but we do not have enough technology to make sure that we're securing those votes, because our vote is really what matters. This is what should really be changing our economy, changing the people that are supposed to represent us. But instead, we're not even able. We got ballots that dumped in. We got people doing illegal things, people Wi-Fi and tapping in. And so I feel like those are the top two issues with me, is making sure that we're getting our First and Second Amendment right. I'm definitely 100% pro Second Amendment, and that we're adhering to that. They want to strip our guns away. They want to strip our voice away. They're coming after the churches. I firmly believe, which is under the umbrella of the First Amendment. They're coming in and they're dealing with the voter integrity. They're trying to strip that right away from us with this HR 1 that's out there, which is a total disaster for our United States, and really it's a total disaster for anyone that's watching from anywhere. So we have all this disastrous plans that's out there, and quite frankly, bills after bills are being passed, and the more bills that are being passed, is more rules and regulations that we do not have. That's not the job of the federal government. Right. Every state has their own right to do what they need to. In fact, when you research, the governor is actually the president of the state. Wow. And so the government is now trying to come in and take the responsibility of God and the parents. That's why we have the LBJ Great Society, where that welfare system came in and really brought a destructive, where we have the destruction of nuclear family, destruction of our economy, and why we see so much issues like we see right now today. And here we go with another president that steps in and pretty much just lives out the oath of LBJ. And so how we can really impact and make a difference and a change with that is the people have to stand up. Those who are elected have to have backbone and courage to get in there and fight back against this system and stop being cowardice and jellyback and start telling people really what it is. You're elected to serve the people. You are a servant leader. You're not here to lord or manipulate or to be a dictator. And so rant is over.
I love that. One thing I also noticed on your Twitter was that you're advocating for term limits. Is that right?
Yes. Correct.
Can you break that down a little bit for those that might not know that there's no necessarily term limits for people who are in your position?
Yeah, and a lot of states have term limits. Some do and some don't. But on the federal level, there's no term limits for Congress. And if you notice, well, you can look at Nancy Pelosi and those people. They're 47 years, 50 years, whatever. I think Nancy got in there in 1987. That was the year I was born. So when you look at these different term limits, affidavits that's out there that we get as candidates, when candidates get into running, they send out all these petitions asking us to sign them, pledges, saying, hey, do you pledge to abide by a term limit clause or whatever when you get in office? And so they'll send you about 12 to 20 different pledges. One of those, again, is the U.S. term limit pledge. And what it says is that you're only going to basically serve 6 years, which will be 3 terms. I believe that term limits should be set by the individual who is running, that and as the Constitution, our founding fathers did not set for it to be a career. It was set for you to go and serve your country to another capacity, stand up for what is right, and then go back home to whatever job you had before you went to those particular offices. What has happened is people have made it a career. 1 is because of the money. 2 is because of the power. And this is where I'm trying to say I'm wanting to stand as a candidate, and when I'm elected, that I want to have a term limit that I set. My personal goal is to only serve the duration of a president would serve, which would be 8 years, which would be 4 terms, and then go back home and continue to do what I need to do. That doesn't mean that I may not run for something local or more, but go there, make sure that you do your job, and go home.
I love that, man. I think you're so dead on about that. One of the things that most people complain about politically, whether they're politically minded or not, is this idea that people can ultimately get rich off politics, and their incentives to help regular Americans kind of go away after a few years in D.C. doing whatever it is that they're doing and acquiring all that power. Getting into power is one thing, but then leaving power is a super difficult thing for most people. That's the human condition. I'm sure we can agree on a Christian level that we're all flawed individuals, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So it's definitely great to hear that there's somebody like you that's advocating for those things, that want to account for the human condition and say, hey, there comes a point where you have to leave power and you have to give somebody else a shot. That's really great, man. So I want to give you the floor now to just be able to tell us where we can find you. We'll wrap this up a little bit. I definitely want to have you back on, but whatever happens come in the upcoming election for you. And just give me the floor. Where can people find you? How can they help? How can they help fund all those things?
Absolutely. You can go to my Twitter is Rep Montague. Facebook is Willie Montague for Congress. I ask everybody to go there and follow and see. If you want to contribute, you want to volunteer, you do not have to live in the state of Florida. We need all the help and support that we can get. And so you can go to teamwillie.com. That is teamwillie.com. Go and see all the different things that we have that's coming up. We're getting ready to roll out an interesting website soon. And you will be able to follow me there. Teamwillie.com, Rep Montague. That is on my Twitter, and Willie Montague for Congress, and Willie Montague on Instagram too. So follow if you have any questions. I'm normally the one that's answering, making sure that you can personally hear from me. And so I'm here. I'm available if you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, suggestions. Hey, wisdom. I always learn that a great communicator is a great listener. So if you have anything you want to share, I would definitely like to hear.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and just give us some of your wisdom. I'm going to stop recording and just stick around and we'll talk for a minute.